Welcome back, builders. This week we are checking out Rus, Sons of Heaven. This is a very fun nation that is inspired by Eastern European slash Russian mythology, and it is a absolute pleasure. And you can tell that the devs enjoyed themselves making this one when you look at their summons list. How many of the awesome creatures are represented here? Let's go ahead and get started. Let's take a look at their lore. Rus is a land of harsh winters and short summers, inhabited by humans and Chudes, an exalted race of great strength and beauty. The Chudes and the humans have intermingled, and neither race is dominant over the other. The Rusian society is divided into two moieties, or parts. The first is composed of hunters and nomads living deep in the forests. They worship the bear and the thunder, and they eat their meat raw. The warriors of this moiety are known for their fury and battle prowess. Their most prominent warriors are even able to take the shape of sacred bear. The other moiety lives in houses of wood and in caves underneath the ground. They cook their meat and practice a new kind of magic. The Chudes of the second moiety call themselves sons and daughters of gods previously unheard of. Most of the Rusian armies are composed of human infantry, but the elites of the kingdom are mighty Chudes. Yet the humans are also field mighty warriors. The axe-wielding bear warriors are respected and feared even amongst the warriors of Ulm. The people of Rus prefer a cold climate. So this is an interesting one. We have a society that has two different races, and they have intermingled and they get along fine. There's no dominance going on here. For a lot of nations, it usually is a power dynamic of there's a group that is in charge and they boss everyone else around. But this isn't the case here. They commingle, they get along, they work together. So that's kind of interesting, especially for such a warrior based society. For national features, we have races are humans and Chudes. All Rusian people have partial cold resistance and prefer cold scales too. So that is actually something of note. So if we check on any random guy here, he has cold resist. So what that's going to tell you is you probably want to head towards cold. For military, we have human infantry, hunters, and berserkers. We also have Chude warriors and sacred Chude skin shifters. For magic, we have very strong air, we have good nature, we have good fire, and we have a tiny bit of earth and astral. We also have many summonable creatures, some of which we cannot natively do, so you would have to come up with either pathing on your pretender or another way to access the paths to summon them in. But we also can get some, at least death off the top of my head. We'll check that in more depth when we get to them. For priests, we have medium, so we can get a priest level 2, but they're few and expensive. This is a little bit misleading because we do also have a summon that is achievable for a Holy 3, and it's a good Holy 3, so quite nice. For scales and blesses, we get cold limit +1, so natively we can go down to cold 3 if we so choose. For buildings, we have primitive forts, so we build the first section and then we build our primitive fort, but it is nowhere near as good as just the standard of the time. We also get half price on our temples, which is rather nice. Anytime you get a discount on infrastructure, it is helpful. And especially for us, because as you'll see when we look at units, we are strongly incentivized to do maybe some unforted recruitment that this will be relevant for. For our sites, we have Hall of the Dawn, which gives us some of our cap-only units, gives us an air and a fire. We have the Pine of Skulls, which gives us our sacreds, and gives us a nature and an astral. And we have the Oak of Storms, which gives us a second air gem and a nature gem. So we have a very nice gem income here. Having astral is always handy. We have nature, which is good, and air that is good, and a little bit of fire, which for us is actually pretty useful. So good smattering of gems there. Rusian units. For units, we have a decent lineup here. Between our human warriors and our Chude warriors, we have a little bit of differentiation for some similar units. First up, we have the Rusian hunter. This guy you can get in your forts as normal, but you also can recruit them just anywhere. And I actually quite like these guys. I was surprised because normally, if I see short bow, okay, I'm already on iffy ground. I see that they are undisciplined short bows. Okay, now I'm off the train. However, these guys actually have some stuff going on for them. At 10 gold, 6 resources, 4 recruitment, they're relatively cheap. So even a really bad province can at least get a couple to a few of them. And decent provinces, you could get up to like 10 if it just happens to have good resources and whatnot. So you can mass these guys up relatively quickly. For a human chassis for Rus, we do have our cold resistance of 5. Always nice just to have free resistances. We also have snow move, which means that we are not hindered by moving through snowed ground. Again, reinforcing that bonus of maybe we do want to go pretty darn cold, because chances are our enemy will not have snow move. Even other cold-liking nations don't always have snow move. So we can outmaneuver people in the snow, which is pretty nice. These guys are stealthy 40, so can be useful. You could do a little bit of raiding or something with them. We've got mountain survival and forest survival, and as previously mentioned, we are undisciplined. Now, why do I actually like these guys? Well, the reason is they have 11 precision, so they have a decent shot with their bow, normal damage on it, so nothing crazy there, but they actually have a spear, and that's actually kind of a big deal. Most archers run around with either a dagger or a short sword. And for us, we have a spear. So what that means is I kind of like to put these guys on the flanks. They're going to run up a little bit and start firing. And they'll stay back and fire, not charge in to die like most undisciplined troops would do, until something gets up to them. And then they have an 11 attack spear, which means they can do some repelling against lighter troops. If it's cav that's hitting them, well, these are what I would want cav to hit anyways, not my more important troops. So I actually quite like that. They can take buffs, although we don't have strength buffs easily accessible, which is what they would really like. But we could do envenom arrows if we were so inclined. We could do fire arrows if we were so inclined. We do have air magic, so we could do wind guide type stuff. So these guys are actually not too bad. I mean, they're not a pygmy, and they're not an elite archer, but for what they do as something to stick on your flanks, to just kind of have something to stop you being flanked, they're all right. And because you can get them outside of forts, your forts can get the good stuff, and then you can just get some of these on the way, like pick them up as you're taking a reinforcement army out, or just build up a chunk of them and send them off to do a raid or something like that. I find these guys pretty useful. They are also our only bowmen. We do not have any other options, which is unfortunate because, as mentioned, we can envenom arrows, we can do fire arrows, and we can do wind guide. So if we had a good archer, we would be very interested in it. Next up, we have a Rusian warrior with spear. These guys are all right. Bog standard human, 10 gold, 12 resources, 9 recruitment, so about even across the board. We're wielding a normal spear. We are wearing iron gear, what I would call kind of standard iron gear. So 11 protection, a decent shield. We're not using a buckler or a wicker shield or anything. An iron cap and a scale mail cuirass. Pretty good. We have our standard cold resistance snow move. I like these guys. This is, if I'm going to get normal line troops, this is probably who I would grab. But we also have a Rusian warrior with axe. Same chassis, same gear, except he trades out his length 3 spear for a length 1 axe. I like these guys a lot less. We'll look at other troops that we could recruit that have axes that I feel are just better. So I wouldn't get this guy. If I want a shield and line infantry type, I think I would go with the spear. But we do have an axe. It is notably only 10 attack. Damage is up to 18. Slashing, usable, but I think we have better options. Next up, we have our first Chewed Warrior. This is Chewed Warrior with Spear. Of note here, Cheweds are superior to humans. We have 17 HP on this chassis. We have 13 strength. Very good. He's wearing the same gear. He's wielding the same weapon. However, he's gone up to 12 attack and 16 piercing damage. That's pretty respectable. I mean, Generally speaking, you're not going up against something that has 16 protection as line infantry. I mean, yes, there are exceptions, but generally. So we have a good chance to hit, we have good repels, and we have enough damage that we can poke our way through if we need to. These guys are pretty good. Now, their holdup is we're double the cost. We went up to 20 gold and 12 resources and 13 recruitment. So you do pay for that. You do pay for that. But that being said, I think these are better, but they're harder to amass. So if I'm limited not by money and I'm getting spearmen, I will probably get these guys. They're still size 3, so you still get 3 to a square, so you have that. Morale 13 is pretty good. It is up from the 10 of the human, so if you need a line to hold, you can definitely do that. It is notable that our line infantry at 10 is less than our undisciplines at 11. So, again, a bonus to the hunters for holding those flanks. Next up, we have the Chewed Hunter, which is capital and all forests. Unlike the short bows, I actually like these guys quite a bit less. We only have 2 javelins, and they're undisciplined. So they're going to run up. They will probably get their throws off because you're probably going to have them on their flanks, and then they're going to head on in. Now, they're still all right. They do have Berserk, which is interesting. No shield or anything. They're only wearing leather armor. They're not super accurate with that javelin, but they do have a pretty nasty spear attack. I don't usually get these guys. I could see an argument being made because they are from all forests. Maybe if you have a forest that you're going to recruit from, you pick these over the human hunters. I don't know. I would have to experiment with that a bit more. The fact that this is such a long range, low accuracy, I think that kind of hurts this one, unfortunately. Although, if you had a big enough mass of them, that won't matter. Javelins kind of rely on mass fire anyways. I don't know, here or there. I guess I also should mention they're 25 gold. 25 gold, protection 11, no shield. I'm not entirely sold on these guys. They do have enough HP that they can probably take a hit and go berserk, so that is a bonus. That'll raise their protection a smidgen more. I don't know. Not sold on those guys. Next up, we have the Chewed Berserker, and I feel like this guy and this guy over here are what make the Rusian Warrior with Axe kind of redundant. Chewed Berserkers are pretty dang good. Now, we have gone up to 35 gold, so this is not a cheap unit. 13 resources and 28 recruitment points. But we have the Chewed HP of 17 and the 13 strength. Both of those are great. We are a Berserker plus 2, so remember that's going to increase your strength and your attack and your protection by 2 when they go Berserk. They have ambidextrous 2, so they are not penalized for doing broadsword and axe dual wielding. And at 13 and 12 respectively, with 19 damage and 21 damage, that's darn good. And it's slashing. So slashing, if you remember, increases damage by 25% after the armor protection has been deducted. But at 19 and 21 damage, you can get through armor just fine and then get that bonus. No shield, obviously, because they're dual wielding. Otherwise, standard gear for our troops. I like these guys a lot. 13 morale is going to hold them together. I wouldn't probably want these on my line. I think I would stick with some version of Spearman. But as a flanking killing force, great. If I need to hack giants apart and I don't have my sacreds, great. Monsters, pretenders, these guys have a lot of potential. The Berserk with high morale keeps them in the fight. I like them a lot. I'm going to skip our Sacred. We'll come back to them in a second. We also have Bear Warriors, which can be recruited in all forests. These guys are all right again. 18 gold, 4 resources, 13 recruitment. We do have 13 HP and 12 strength, so they're above normal humans. They are stealthy Berserkers, and they're Berserk 3. So this attack can go up to 14, and our damage up to 23. We're ambidextrous again. We are undisciplined. So do I find myself getting these a lot? No. But I could definitely see circumstances where I would want them. Because they're stealthy, they could go in and raid. Like, this is enough damage that just taking out like some normal PD with a full group of these guys is possible. Would I recruit them for my main army? Probably not. I really wish they had some throwing axes. That would really help them out, like those Olmish troops. But alas, they do not have that. Finally, for troops, we have the Chewed Skin Shifter, and this guy is an absolute unit. He is amazing. He's a good sacred. So, first off, he's a Chewed, so extra HP, and he goes above and beyond even that. So he's got 19 HP and 14 strength. He wields a Battle Axe, which is a length 2 slashing weapon, 15 attack and 26 damage. And we have Berserk 3. So this goes up to 18 attack when he goes Berserk and 29 damage. Oftentimes, you will one-hit whatever these guys are swinging at. And they have a good attack, so they probably will do it. They're size 3, so you can have 3 of them in a square. They are relatively lightly armored at only 8 protection. We have furs and fur mask. When you go Berserk, you'll go up by 3, so you'll have 5 natural protection. That's low enough. You'll probably get to 11 once you go Berserk. Of note here, we also have Recuperation, which is really nice. And it plays into, while we don't have an icon up here, if you read the text, essentially when we die, instead of dying, we turn into a bear. And it is quite nice. Unfortunately, the battles I have in my game behind me, I do not have any werebears because we are destroying things so much that no one's getting knocked into bear form. But once you get down and killed, quote unquote, you instead turn into a werebear who has 45 HP, 20 strength, and they have 2 attacks with a claw and a bite, and they retain their Berserker plus 3. So very survivable unit. I mean, you're looking at a combined 64 HP, and you have recuperation. So if you take any wounds, which you probably will, you can recoup that off. So it is not unusual with a decent bless that you can essentially have no attrition on these guys. And that leads us into, when we look at our blessing and pretender design, some tough choices, because there's several ways you could go with these. This is a very strong sacred. I quite like them. And the fact that they have a second form makes them very powerful, and opens up some decent options for expansion with these guys. Commanders, Heroes, and Prophet. For our command line, we have some decent choices here. First up, we have a Scout, which can be recruited outside of forts as well, meaning we can always get this guy. We don't have to rely on finding an indie. And what's nice about him is for 35 gold, which is relatively the standard for indie scouts, we get cold resist and snow move, we have stealth, and we have mountain survival and forest survival. So a good scout. He does have a short bow, so if for some weird reason you're caught and have to fight, he at least can shoot things and not just run into melee with his dagger and die. Next up, we have the Rusian Chieftain. You start with one of these as your starting commander. You get him and a scout. Unfortunately, he's only 75 leadership. Otherwise, he is a standard Rusian human, standard gear. Essentially, he does wield a broadsword, has the snow move, has the cold resist. I use these guys. I recruit a few of them to ferry troops around and to build my fortresses. Otherwise, we have a better leader, in my opinion. Although I could hear arguments about why you might want to use this guy, which we will talk about when we look at the other commander. So he's okay. He's only 55 gold. He's only 1 recruitment point, so that's a bonus to him. But the 75 leadership is disappointing. Next up, we have the Rusian Chieftain, can be recruited outside of forts. I never get these guys. I guess they are your stealthy leaders, so if you're going to do some raiding, this is who you would have to grab. Unfortunately, they have Berserk, so a straight arrow will often send them into melee to die. Not too much to say about this guy. Next up, I'm going to actually skip ahead to the Chewed Chieftain. All Forest recruit. This is a Leadership 100 guy, so he is usually who I get to lead my troops around because I want formations. The downside is he has Berserk, and even the game behind me where I was dominating, I had, I think, 2 or 3 within my 3 years I was playing this one, get hit by a stray arrow, go Berserk, run into melee, and get himself killed. He does have 19 HP, so he generally survives it. He has Berserk plus 3, so he gets extra protection. He has a javelin, so if he is doing his job and staying behind troops, he can chuck a couple javelins, which is nice. if I'm going to gear these guys, I would give them just a shield. A shield would really help this guy out. Maybe a shield and a bow if you want to really go pricey, which I wouldn't do, but a shield would really help him out. Just to hopefully not take any damage and not go berserk. Uh, at 100, though, he is the leader I usually use to move troops around, at least in the early game. Next up, we have the Rusian Priest. He has 65 gold. He is a priest level 1 and sacred. Not much to say about him other than he has our standard stuff. He is a guy that you're going to recruit a few of if you need to bless sacreds and you don't have a holy 3 available generally. We have other priests, but they are mages and strong mages, so it's hard to waste turns just blessing with them. I would rather grab a few of these to do it. Next up, we have the Rusian Wizard, which can be recruited in forts and all caves. So it does give you an incentive if you want to go down to the cave layer and drop labs. You can definitely recruit these guys down there. And they're adept researchers +2. So 13 research at 140 gold is rather pricey. But that being said, that's not... Yeah, it is just below the good spot. But you'll get a little bit more with your random roll. So I think this goes up to 14. In fact, we could check that. I should have a few of you. No, he's at 13, unfortunately. But that being said, he's okay. And he's your non-fort recruit. So it's not like you have a big choice. This is your research mage. And their pathing's actually okay. They come in with fire, nature, and then a random of air, earth, astral, or nature. All of those different things can do something in combat. Generally speaking, unfortunately, most of those are not things that have great cross-pathing ability. He is a unit that can do some of your national summons, depending on his randoms. He does give you a supply bonus. We can actually amass armies big enough that the supply bonus becomes relatively important. And he does have Adept Researcher +2, which at least helps on that efficiency. If he didn't have that, that would be pretty miserable efficiency. Next up, we have the Son of Heaven. This is a cap only. He's not slow to recruit. At 380 gold, he's pretty pricey. Unfortunately, we run into the problem of wide pathing, which makes an expensive mage that can't do high-level magic. This is our priest level 2, and he has 160 leadership, which not only lets you do formations, but gives +2 morale. If you need a better leader, this guy could be it. Note, he does only have robes, though, so he's not particularly armored. Dropping a piece of armor on him might be worthwhile. You do have air, so he can at least air shield himself. That is something that makes him much less likely to take a stray arrow. For 152 gold, you get 13 research. So while he's about equal to the Rusian mage, he's cap only. So that makes him down a little bit, in my opinion. He does have a battle axe, and he's good at using it. So when things flank around and get to him, he'll probably take at least one of them out with his 20 HP. And with what he has down here, while he can't go very high, he has some important things. He can air shield, he can eagle eyes, and then he can at least throw fire spells. The eagle eyes will also help if he's doing like banishment spam, make that a little more accurate. And from his randoms, he has fire, air, astral, and nature. So you could go up to 2 fire, 2 air, or 2 nature. And you could get astral, which again can help you summon in some of your national stuff. Or you could drop him into a communion, which we're not a great communion nation because we don't have easy access to astral. But you could get one up and running. It would just take 2 guys to get him up to a holy 3. So you could bootleg a holy 3 if you needed to. He's okay. I do tend to get a few of these guys. I'm fishing for that astral for some of our summons. Next up, we have the Daughter of the Sun, another cap only. She is fire 2 out of the box, so she's already a better fire caster. Now, do note, we do like cold, so if you're playing cold, fire is diminished somewhat. That being said, it's still totally usable. Like, it's not the end of the world. 2 fire, 1 nature, 1 priest level, and she gets fire, air, astral, and nature, if you're noticing a pattern here. She also has a 10% chance to get another one, but I don't count on those ever. I usually get at least one of these early to help site search for fire 2. Otherwise, I would wait until I have some good magic and I have a plan what I'm going to do with them. At almost 400 gold, and it's cap only, this is a hard sell early on, and her efficiency is actually worse than the Rusian wizard, so not a research mage. Next up, we have the Perkunu. The Perkunu is a cap only, very strong mage. He is 535 gold, slow to recruit, cap only. What do you get for that? Priest level 1, Nature 2, Astral 1, Air 3 out of the box. He does have a 10% chance of Air, Astral, or Nature. Again, I don't count on 10%. In this game, I recruited one and he came in at an Air 4, which was just lucky. At an Air 4, that means you can make air boosters, and that would be quite handy for this nation. But again, I would not count on a 10% chance slow to recruit mage to get that. That being said, even at just an Air 3, you either could Communion up, or you could just spend the extra gems to cast Storm. And when we look at our next mage, he's another Air mage. Storm is pretty good for us. Yeah, I quite like this guy. He's very expensive. He does have the recuperation, and yeah, he also gets the bear shapeshifting, so he actually is pretty dang survivable, because you'll go through your 19 HP, and then you'll have the bear's, 45 HP to go through. In fact, he actually gets the symbol here, so shape change, werebear, and he has the recuperation, which is quite nice. If my early game prophet died off, and I didn't do one of our summons to go up to Holy 4, this is probably the guy that I would re-prophetize, just because he would be much more survivable than any of our other options. Do note his leadership went down, but his magic leadership is up. That might be relevant because we can do lots of summon things, so maybe you do need that. No undead leadership. So, I guess it also should be noted, he has shock resist, so he has both the cold and the shock. So, again, just some free resists are always nice. Finally, we have the Thunder Priest. He can be recruited in all forests, so this is a priest that you cannot just get in any fort. He has to be in a forest. And you may want to do lab and temples in forests that you're not going to fort, just so that you could get some of these guys out. Of note, he's an inept researcher, so he has 11 research for 130 gold, so he's not efficient. But out of the box, he is an Air 2, Nature 1, Priest 1, and he gets one of Air, Earth, Astral Nature. So you could have an Air 3 guy, not unusual on here. And combining this with our cap-only mage, we can do Storm, and then have guaranteed Air 3 mages to do lightning or thunderstorms, etc., etc. Pretty darn good. And for a main battle mage, 130 gold is not too bad. And 130 gold for a mage we're going to recruit, and he's guaranteed to be useful. And depending on what he gets for his random, he might be more useful. So this could be somebody to go into a communion as the slave. The earth allows you to get some earth income going. Unfortunately, we are just Earth 1, so we're not ever going to really be able to do big earth buffs, at least natively. But it can be handy to get some in there for some little self-buffing, or they could lead a communion and get some buffs going. But again, we're not a great communion nation, and if he rolled the earth, he wouldn't have the astral, so you'd have to use items or empowerment to get it in there. So give up those earthen dreams, basically. But as a very strong air mage, and air is not affected by the cold, unlike our fire mage, very useful, very useful. Again, you'll have the nature, so you could do like Eagle Eyes, Bark Skin, Summon Storm Power, and Spam, or you could just do probably Eagle Eyes, Storm Power, Spam. That leaves you 3 script spots to put offensive spells on there. Very good mage, very good mage. It does make you really, really prefer to get forests. So when you're choosing your expansion, forests are of high interest to us. Who would I prophetize? As previously mentioned, I do our starting chieftain, and if he died, I would probably do a Perkunu or the Holy 3 summons that we will look at to go up to a Holy 4. I don't really think there's a ton of other options here. Nothing at least sticks out to me. Let's just pop into heroes for a second. We have the Hag. She is your death access, so you get that. Has high fear. I wouldn't send her out into combat because I would keep her behind. She does give you several cross paths for some of the stuff you otherwise couldn't get. We have the Son of the Bear, an interesting unit. I would mainly just use him for his casting. Like most fighty type heroes, I wouldn't want to lose him. He does have the recuperation, which is quite nice. And we have the Daughter of Thunder. She is a native Air 4, so she can natively just cast storms. She does have Shapeshift. It is useful enough. I don't even remember what this one does. I don't know if I've ever Shapeshifted her. Yeah, so good heroes. I would say the Hag is by far the best because she brings in some diversity you otherwise don't have. National spells and magic. We have, as previously shown, a lot of national summons. In fact, all of our national magic is in conjuration, and it's all of these guys. I should have on the screen here a look from the Dom Inspector. I think it's going to be easier to look at that than it would be to look through here. So we have just almost every level, we have one or more special summons. And I'm just going to go through them in order of what is on our national screen, and then we will just go from there. So let's just go in the order they're on here because I'm going to get lost because we have so dang many of them. I will start... Well, no, let's just go in order. Cloud Villa. This is a flying mage that has storm immunity and is a healer. So you have a summonable healer that is already pretty interesting. Also a seduction. We have several units that can do seduction. A good mage. Would I get a lot of these? I don't know. They're definitely good, though. Next up, we have a Mountain Villa. This one is pretty interesting to me. They are a healer level 2. They are mounted. They have a lot of a lot of map move because of that. They have a Sacred Stag, so it is a Sacred Mount and Sacred Caster. Guaranteed to have Astral, so a couple of these could support a Perkunu to do the Storm if you didn't luck into a high one. Could definitely go that route. They are stealthy, so I could see them maybe doing some thuggy things. I think they might be a little light for that. Usable. Having healer is always nice, and yeah, good one. Does come in with a Vine Bow, so that's normally a 5-gem magic item you would have to craft, so quite good there. Next up, we have the Alchemist. This is our Holy 3. This comes in at Conjuration 4, so it is totally rushable. You have an income of 1 Astral, and even if you don't luck into more, I think empowering an Astral 1 Mage to Astral 2 to summon these, and then getting the gems via alchemy is viable. It is an inspirational +2, although I don't know if I would have it generally leading troops around. Does have high shock resist, is flying, so map 28 move, flying, Holy 3. Very, very good. This will make Blessing Your Sacreds a cinch, and it will give us more Holy 3s. And I believe the cost of this is 15 Astral Pearls, so it is incredibly affordable. I mean, even if you don't have any other Astral, that's only 30 gems. 30 gems for a Holy 3 is a steal, an absolute steal. Doesn't have any protection, doesn't have good slotting to get it. These would probably be pretty interested in a Barkskin Amulet, if nothing else. That would at least give you some defense. And I think it'd be worthwhile, because at 12 HP, 0 protection, a stray arrow could definitely kill you. And you are size 4 flying, so you're pretty easy to target out. So I would be very interested in giving these at least the Barkskin Amulet, and I don't know, maybe something that gives it Air Shield just to really protect it. But that all being said, a summonable Holy 3 that is achievable natively is incredibly strong. And it's only at Conjuration 4. Most nations that have summonable Holy 3s, it's pretty high. They're usually like 6, 7, 8. So this is pretty darn notable and a decent spike in power. Next up, we have the Gemayun. Um, Interesting. You know, it does have Fortune Teller. It is Astral 2, which I believe is our highest Astral. Air 2, Holy 2. Could be good if you get that far. It's fine. Totally usable. We have a Siren. These come in relatively early on. Let me get this in front of me. Should have that ready. The Siren comes in at Conjuration 3 at a Astral 2, which are already going to empower somebody probably to do our Conjuration 4. Would I get any of these early? No, because I want my pearls to go into Holy 3s. But at 8 Astral Pearls, we get a Stealthy 50 Dream Seduction. So quite nice seduce attempt here. And if you're adjacent to a friendly territory, or if you're seducing size 3s, you can capture them. If she fails her seduction, she's not very good at the assassination game. So again, I would probably give her a Barkskin amulet. And if you're really trying to seduce people, maybe the cat charm? Whatever the female seduce bonus is, might be worthwhile on her. So is a usable seductress. Much better than some nations who have like a 400 or 500 gold dryad that wants to go seduce. For eight astral gems, I would be willing to make that, and it flies, so it gives you a little bit more target selection. Next up, we have a Bukavak. This is a aquatic summon and a pretty good one. So if you somehow get underwater and want to summon up these guys, they have fear, they have multiple attacks, a absolute boatload of hit points. These guys would love to be point buffed with some regen. That would be 17 HP around regen. Give them ethereal. They would absolutely love that. They do have trample, so yeah, a ethereal regening trampler underwater is devastating, absolutely devastating. Next up, we have a Lishi. Again, another summonable mage. She's notable, I suppose, for having guaranteed earth magic. Otherwise, not particularly interesting. Next up, we have a Liko. This one is a death 1. So we do not natively have any death. The odds are in the early age, you could probably find something that can do death 1. For 10 death gems, they are a stealthy, unrest-causing bringer of misfortune. Bringer of misfortune is increased chance to bring bad events. So I believe this is 10%, I think is how you read that. So if you have an event, the odds of it being bad go up by 10%. I would be willing to summon these if I got a Deathcaster. Send these to an enemy capital and just let them mess with the unrest, let them get some bad events. Yeah, I think it's interesting enough, usable. Stealth is high enough that it's not going to be instantly found, and you could buff that with some items if you were so inclined. If she gets caught, though, she's dead. So, should be noted, she does have a range 50 curse with 30 ammunition. So if you did have one of these with your army, and you put her on just ranged attack, 30 rounds of staying safe is pretty good. It's going to hit, it will not miss. And she'll probably end up targeting like enemy gods if they're large. So can be pretty nice there. Cursing elephants or other large things like giants helps get rid of them pretty quickly. So I think this is an interesting utility piece. Next up we have a Vad Yanoi. This is an underwater mage that we can summon. I believe we can do the summon for this guy remote. It's a Conjuration 4. And yeah, it is a range 4 remote spell. So I don't know if you could break in underwater because you would summon them in and not be able to script them. So you'd just be relying on the AI to be smart about casting. Yeah. But if you could get underwater, this guy could totally, like a water 3 mage underwater is very strong. And he is stealthy, so that's something. Yeah, usable. And he's only Conjuration 4, so you don't even have to go very high. You're definitely going for the Alchemist, so you'll have an opportunity to maybe use it. Next up, we have a Ruskoka. This is, again, a Conjuration 4. It's a water death, so not one we can do natively. It does give us death access, so that can help us get more death mages. She does have seduction. She's amphibious, so she can come onto land. She's undead, so interesting there. And she has gift of water breathing, so if you can get that foothold, you can really latch in there. That does give you an argument for some of those leather armored troops, because even though you can have water breathing, if you go down there with iron weapons, they will rust. It's not a protection for that. So, interesting utility piece. Next, we have a Bergina. Similar, kind of, sort of, to the previous one. It's a water, earth, nature mage. This one comes in at Conjuration 6, needs 3 water and an earth, so not one we can natively summon. Not much more to say about that one. Lady Midday. This is a very interesting one. It's a Conjuration 5, Air 3, Death 1. So again, it's going to be hard for you to get this. But if you do, it is an Assassin level 2, Ethereal Assassin. Now it only has 7 HP, so that's a little bit worrisome. If I had one of these, I'd sure like to give it a Barkskin Amulet, which would just give it 10 protection plus ethereal. Maybe you could take a hit. Maybe. But it comes in with a Plague Scythe. So it is a size or length 3, so you have a decent chance to repel, especially against mages. Decent chance there. And its special is it hits things with disease. So even if you only get one hit and somehow you don't kill them with their 21 magic damage, which, let's be honest, you probably will kill them, they'll be diseased, and that'll be the end of that mage probably sooner or later. Next up, we have the Firebird. Firebirds are very interesting. Conjuration 3, fire and an astral to summon, so you can do this natively. These are nerfed down from how they used to be in 5, but I still think they're worthwhile. You really don't have a ton to do with fire gems otherwise, and these guys have Bringer of Fortune 2. So the idea would be you stack them up in a province to snowball your odds of getting good events there. So I think they're worthwhile. I wouldn't bring them to combat. They're magic beings, so they're vulnerable to certain spells. They do have fire resist, but otherwise. They do have an area of effect 1 armor-piercing fire magic attack. That can be quite useful against certain targets, so as a desperation move, maybe you would send your flock of firebirds at somebody, but generally I wouldn't use this as a combat. You only get 1 per ritual. The main draw here is an economic one. Next up, we have the Simargul. These guys are interesting. Unfortunately, their summon spell, it comes in at Conj 2. 1 air gem requires 1 air to cast, but it only summons 1. So for mage turns, that's incredibly inefficient. Why would you be interested in these? These guys are really high patrollers. Patrol bonus 10 gives them 11.8 patrol strength. So 5 of these would give you 50 patrol strength. I think they're interesting enough that maybe 4 of these guys patrolling your forts just to keep people's scouts out of them, patrolling your thrones to keep people's scouts out of them, could have some use, I suppose. They are flying, and they're not undisciplined, so you could summon a few of these to fly around with your prophet to give her some bodyguards. They're not particularly good or anything, but they would give her something. Next up, we have Great Bear. All right, all of you people who always say, oh, you don't like the animal summons. Okay, here's what I like. These are actually really good, and these play into how good I think our nation is for sacreds, because you can get the summon ritual for this at Conjuration 3. It is a nature holy 1, so you have several different mages who can cast it, and it gives you quite a few. The Summon Bears, which is different than the Sloth of Bears spell, which we also have. The Summon Bears spell is 8 nature gems for 15 of these guys. 15 sacred sacks of HP. They have 45 HP. They have double attacks. They are undisciplined. One nice thing about them is they're size 6, so you can put them behind your main infantry, and they will push their way to the front and share their square with one human. So that's pretty nice. Depending on what your bless is, getting these guys up there can be very, very useful. They have okay attack at 11, and they have great damage. So out of the box, they already are a little bit killy. When they're blessed, they'll have at least 14 morale. Their weaknesses, however, 8 protection, which isn't great, and they have magic resist of only 8. So they're going to have the animal weakness. Is it worth plugging that with your blessing? Probably not, because your other guys are so good and they don't need that. I don't think I would do it. But I do think you want to take these into account when you're making your bless, because you can spam these guys out quite healthily, and they just are great bulk. They also are good at siege. They are 4 siege strength each. Pretty darn good there. They're terrible at patrol, though. So you're going to use these for combat, is what that comes down to. Very, very nice. Finally, we have the Zime. This is an interesting one. He is Conjuration 5, Fire 2, so totally doable by us. It gives you a cold-blooded, unfortunately, fire-resistant flyer. I do kind of like a few of these. He has the, narrow beam. So this is like, I believe this is a line attack of Drake Fire. It's interesting. He's got 3 attacks plus the Drake Fire, which is fire and magical damage. So again, helping you out against certain targets that you might otherwise struggle with. Summoning in, 5 of these guys on a hold and attack rear could be pretty devastating, even if you're fighting in your cold domain. And maybe you could just buff them with some cold resist, and then they'd be fine in that way. They only have 13 protection and 45 HP, so they're not invulnerable or anything, but I think they're totally usable. I quite find these interesting. They also have 3 heads, so something interesting. They are size 8, so they're big boys. I could totally see a surprise throw like Ethereal on them, maybe regen, and let them go to town. A hold and attack rear. Quite a good distraction. You don't have a lot of things that are going to be back there, so you don't have to worry about the friendly fire of that fire breath, and they won't be able to hurt each other with it. So, yeah, I like these. I think they're interesting. Have to just remember to use them, I suppose. All right, that is our national magic. We have no national items. Other magic thoughts. We definitely, in my opinion, want to rush directly to Conjuration 3. It unlocks Firebirds, it unlocks Bears, and I think there's a strong argument for rushing straight to 4 and rushing out at least 1 Alkanost, which is our Holy 3 summon. I think that's very powerful. The Bears are hard to bless because they're 1 per square, and even if you're only trying to bless 8 of them, that's 2 rounds of blessing from a normal priest. And they're not... they're undisciplined, so they're going to run off right away. Having a Holy 3 to bless your Bears is very useful. I think that is a great opening. We have lots of air magic, we have a little bit of earth, and we have lots of nature magic. So some of the low-level alteration buffs, especially Eagle Eyes and Barkskin, I think are very worthwhile. If you go higher, then I do think there's something to be said about, you have some fire stuff here. You have Inner Sun, probably not something you want to use, but could be an interesting thing maybe. Up at level 5 in Alteration, we have the Mother Oak. This is a hard one, because you're going to get Bears first, and you're going to be spamming out some Bears. So if you're going to do Mother Oak, I think you need to time your Bear summoning to stop early enough that you can cast Mother Oak when it comes up. In multiplayer, it's going to be much harder. Like, people will definitely want to take this down. But in single player, Mother Oak is huge. Like, 10 Nature Gems is more than a casting of bears every single turn, and it ups your growth by +2 wherever you have it, so probably your capital. Very powerful spell there. In evocation, I should also note we have Storm at level 5, so another argument that maybe you go bears, you go alt 5, which gets you Mother Oak and Storm, and then you run up a little bit of evocation, and you grab at least Lightning Bolt, but probably Thunder Strike. I think that is very, very useful there. And we have mages that are strong enough that Wrathful Skies is possible. It's possible. It's hard, but possible. This would give us a reason that we may want to consider Shock Resist on our Bless. It's a powerful spell, but man, the Friendly Fire is rough on that. For construction, we have Native Air, so Quills are on the menu. Otherwise, we don't have enough Earth to get hammers, which is a major drawback. That being said, we have supply issues, so bags of broth or wine, or the cauldron of broth and the bag of wine might be usable. We probably are not going to do Vineman things because we'd rather do bears, but having Barkskin amulets would be rather good for several of our different mages, several of our summoned commanders could be useful there. We do have units that are good enough that you could do some light thugging, so just getting some equipment for them might be useful. We don't have a lot of the stuff that you would want to rush up to 5 for, though. We don't have death for Skull Mentors or for Skull Staves. We could use the nature boosters, so that might be useful. We have a lot of use for nature gems, so we're probably not going to spam Homunculi out. So I think Conjuration 3, unless you have a plan, is the stop there. From enchantment, there's a lot of things that we would be interested in doing here. We could do our arrow stuff, so we can envenom arrows. We can do our flaming arrows. We can do our arrow guiding type things. This also gives us a little bit of astral, although we're not great at doing any of that. It does give us some stuff there. Yeah, not huge into enchantment, but I could see it being useful. Finally, we have Thaumaturgy. You'll probably want to grab at least level 1 just to have communions available, kind of a break in case of emergency type thing. That being said, there's not a ton here. Bonds of Fire is not terrible. We do have Fire too, so the Fury line of spells for extra attack and morale is pretty good. We could do our remote nature searching via that. We also can do the animal buffing things, which could help our bears out. Notably, our sacreds have a berserk, but our summoned sacreds do not. So Rage of the Cornered Rat is a pretty good spell for them. It gets their protection up, gets their attack up. It actually has some area of effect, so you can at least get a few of them per cast. Could be useful there. Pack Ferocity is not that hard to cast. We can do that pretty easily natively. And that would really help our bears out quite a bit. Or any other animal summons that you're using, but I think bears would be the main one. So we have quite a wide interest in many ways to go, and I think the only real requirement is bears. After you get your bears, you could go for fire magic, you could go for thug magic, you could go for army buffing magic, you could go for construction. I think you have a ton of options there. Okay, so let's bring this all together. So we are a nation that has really good sacreds and a really easy to cast good summon of more sacreds, plus a plethora of other summonable sacreds and usable sacreds. So blessing is definitely on the table. The chewed skin shifters with a decent bless are good enough to expand with. And even just base kit, if you're careful with them, they can expand. They're not going to be able to solo expand with like 10 of them. You're going to need some other chaff with them if they're not running their blessing. But they're that good. They're quite good. We have higher, more elite troops that if we can afford are pretty good. They will mince human troops. We have affordable human troops. We have a couple different options of recruit anywhere type troops, and they have uses. We have an undisciplined bow that has a use. It's a usable thing. We have strong mages, although our pathing is a little bit wide and they're a little bit expensive. We have some forest recruit mages that are very good for us, so we're going to want to focus in on getting some extra forests. We get our own scout that we can recruit anywhere, so we don't have to rely on indies. That's quite nice. We have several different types of berserkers, which is a nice thing to have in your pocket. Pretty darn good. All right, let's take a look at pretenders. So right here you can see several different versions of pretenders that I was building and testing out. I think you could go many different ways here. You could go all the way from imprisoned bless with good scales to awake blesser and everything in between. So there's a ton of options here. Let's take a peek at the available chassis. We have the kind of Nordic grouping, which unfortunately is kind of narrow. Like, we don't have a ton of options here, but we have several interesting and usable ones. Of note, I would say we have Monolith, we have Irminsul. Irminsul is of particular interest to me here because he gets starting sight. I don't remember the name of it, but it gives you 1 nature gem. Even if you were to go imprisoned, you would get that sight, essentially upping your nature income by an additional +1 for the entire game. That is quite strong, because for 8 nature gems, we can summon in 15 sacred bears. So anything that ups our nature is very strong for us. We also have sacreds that can make good use of either enlarge, possibly, or more likely regen. And he is the cheapest regen chassis that you can get. He also has bears with him, so it's on theme here. Overall, quite a strong choice, I think. Monolith brings in some interesting choices. If you want to do large, he can do that natively pretty easily. The Astral would let you get magic weapons, which we don't have. Could be pretty useful. Down in the Titan area, I want to call out a couple specifically. The Vola of Bountiful Forest is a gem gen. She gives you a water gem and a nature gem. As previously mentioned, the nature gem is very strong. This would probably be like maybe regen quickness. I would go with her on her. Now, she's expensive. Like, he is 140, she is 200. So that's a scale and a half in cost. If I was going to go with her, I do still think I would try to get her awake, because you want to get those gems right off the bat. So your scales are going to suffer quite a bit from that. The Divis of the Sun is another one. She's a gem gen, 2 fire gems. If you really wanted to try focusing in on Firebird summoning, this would give you a Firebird per turn, just right off the bat. And for her native bless, you're looking at probably like regen and fire shield. Very usable, works for your bears, works for your sacreds. Doesn't hurt any of your mages that have it. That's totally usable. I will mention Asyaja. She is a disease healer. While we can get some normal healers, we do not have that available to us. She also brings in glamour, which we don't natively have. We also get the Son of Fenrir. He could be kind of interesting. Again, he is a nature water. He has the wolves that he summons in. They are sacreds when he goes into combat. He's a smidgen on the squishy side for just solo expansion, but he could expand with some guys. All of our troops have that cold resist. So if you wanted to maybe go like cold aura, maybe this would be your guy. Like you do regen and cold aura. That could be something. We have dragons. We need recruitment points and money. We don't particularly need production. So the sloth is not too painful for us. If you wanted to go maybe the ice dragon, like the blue here, or the nature dragon. The blue would probably be more interesting because we do at least have some cold resist, even though it wouldn't protect us totally from his breath. Could be something useful. Frostfather, another interesting one here. We also have the female dog queen. I don't know about this one. She's only got 25 HP. No, in High Dominion, that would be a lot higher. But Invulnerability 15 is not going to save you. Regen 10%. Not sold on that one. So we have quite a few different choices here. Looking at scales, I think you can dump Sloth. You could just do it. I think there's arguments to be made about either Cold 3 and just really commit to the cold thing because we have cold protection and we have snow move. Very good defensively. Doesn't hurt us too much. This will make it so we can get cold enough to have people die, so maybe you want at least one growth if you're going that route. Could be something there. I do think there's also an argument to be made. Since this is our neutral point, you could go all the way up to like just neutral heat or even heat 1. That's a lot of points. That's 120 points right there. Now, you're giving up your bonus cold resist that helps you and hurts other people, hopefully, and you're giving up your snow move. But that being said, that's a lot of points. That's a lot of points. Magic-wise, our researchers are relatively strong, so you could make an argument, maybe even going like Drain 1 and just eating it, or maybe you go the opposite. Maybe you go like Magic 2 and really pump up that research ability. So that could be something of interest. Let's look at what I have done. I think... okay, so I had a couple different versions. Let's look at Old Oak first. This is a very good bless. His problem is I took him as dormant. So we had to go Turmoil. We actually struggled to get our full 6 sacred points out of our capital. We didn't have enough recruitment points on some of the spawns. So this was a hard one. We don't have a ton of fortune teller, so we can't negate this as easily as we otherwise might, although summoning in Firebirds mitigates some of that bad luck penalty, so that's something. He brings in Resilience of the Earth, which gives us 10 shock, 10 fire resist. So we are 10 shock, 10 fire resist, 5 cold resist on our sacreds. And that goes for both our normal sacreds and our bears. The shock resist is really nice because we're going to be throwing thunderbolts and other things. So friendly fire is pretty inevitable on that. And having the shock resist makes that a lot less painful. Also keeps you from getting stunned from just peripheral damage that's going off from your own lightning. He also went with Regen and Blood Bond. Overall, I did expand with some of my sacreds, and I just was very careful, but I had some attrition, because you're not going to have your other blessings on the start. Yeah. I did a version 2 of him, that's Woody here, and I like this one a lot more. He is awake. If you notice, his scales are actually a smidgen better because I didn't have to go very high in Earth. I did get some Earth because I needed to get enough points for my blessing, and 3 Earth basically means that he can make Earth boots and he can make Dwarven hammers. If he can get even a smidgen of Earth income, then he can kind of get Earth rolling for us. He could give the boots to one of our random Earth 1 guys who can go out and search Earth 2 or do some gnome lore, find some more Earth sites. Even if we could only forge, let's say 2 hammers, that'd be great. That's still fine. He's an inept smith, so he's not as good at crafting. So, yeah, you're still going to have to empower, I guess, to get the boots. That is a bit of an ouch, but it's what I could afford. With Regen and Blood Bond, I want to talk about this specifically. This is already a great survival buff for a lot of sacreds. What really kicks it into overdrive for us is we have, 19 HP, and then a second form of 45 HP. So you're regenerating +2 right off the bat. And if you turn into the bear, you're getting +5 regen. And Blood Bond is interesting. When you get hit, you split off half the damage that you took to people within range 5 of you that are also blessed. So what that tends to do is, somebody takes a hit, they don't die because you have 19 HP. Let's say they hit you for 15. So you take 8 of that damage, and you spread the other 7 out, that just puts you all berserk. So now your attack's up, your damage is up, and your protection is up, and you're relatively safely berserked on everyone who spread the damage, and everyone starts regening +2. So you're just getting, instead of the one guy regening +2 and then getting hit a second time and dying, now you have a lot of time to regen because you could probably take a second hit and not die. And so every round you're getting that +2, and you can outsource your regen to multiple people. So it's kind of like when you're taking sporadic damage that you're getting like 10 regen every turn instead of 2 because everyone took a safe amount of damage and they're regenning it off. And let's say you take another hit and you go bear. Okay, well now you've got 45 HP to soak through, and now you're regening 5 per turn, and you have recuperation natively to get rid of that horrible chest wound or that limp that you just took, and you'll just get it off. In my game behind me, I don't think I saw but 1 or 2 people die on the march because they were just regenning off their cripple and their limps. Very, very strong. Blood Bond is less useful for your mages, but even there, like a 10 mage sacred might actually survive if he can share half that damage with other people, and then they would have some time to regen. Because generally speaking, you're not getting pelted with arrows like consistently. It's just they got a lucky hit on you. So that's kind of useful. The regen is good there. If you have thugs, the Blood Bond doesn't do much for a thug, but the regen sure does. And you can double that up with personal regen. So a lot of your thuggy people might be getting 4 or 5 regen per round once they've self-buffed themselves. Pretty darn strong there. As previously mentioned, I really like Irminsul here because of the extra nature gem. By the time, with him starting out, that's 35 research. It's hard for you to get early mages for researching because you are money bound for your expansion. You want to be getting 5 or 6 sacreds every single round. That's expensive. That's 300 plus gold worth of sacreds every round. It's hard to find the gold, and we don't have a cheap, 60 to 100 gold researcher. Ours all start at like 135-ish or something. So he gets the ball rolling towards getting your bears out. And you really, really want those bears out. So it's a double whammy. He increases the gems you need and gives you the research to get there. That is very powerful. By the time I went to warn the game behind us, which I will bring in there, maybe we'll talk about briefly, I was able to do 4 or 5 summons of bears. I had him and 2 mages, so I basically took 2 rounds, I did a bunch of summons, and I took like 60 bears, and I went and rushed one of my neighbors. I killed that neighbor, and I saw an opportunity target, and I rushed my other neighbor. So I'm not even year 3, and I've killed 2 close targets using essentially sacreds and bears. And even my really, really bad fort battle I had at one of them, I mostly just lost summoned bears, which I'm okay with. They're only half a gem each, give or take. I'm okay with that. I would much rather lose a bear than one of my good sacreds. And having those bears and your sacreds together with this blessing means that the shared damage gets shared to the bears, and the bears are natively regenerating 5. So they're not going to die from the shared damage. It is quite powerful. Quite powerful. So very, very much enjoy that setup. Other things, so here is a Divus of the Sun with the regen Fire Shield attempt. I didn't like this one because I took too much turmoil. I think I would rework this. I would try to get that turmoil down to at least order 0. I think just neutral scales is fine for your sacred recruitment. But turmoil 2 was a bit much. Now, how would I do that? I don't know. You're definitely going to have to lower this some. I don't know. The Firebird thing, it's cool, it's usable, it's nerfed. I'm not sure it's as good as it used to be. We have Moist. This is a Vola of the Bountiful Forest. This was the Quickness regen. Quickness is nice because it helps you get the first hit in with your battle axe on your sacreds. It gives you an additional +2 attack. That means that once you go berserk, you're at like 17 attack with that battle axe, and it is a length too, so you might be getting some parry, or not parry, some repels with it, and that can be very nice for their survivability. It ups their defense by 2, which just helps. And when you go to the bear form / your bear sacreds, you have 2 attacks. So this gives you 4 attacks per turn. So I think that's pretty usable. She had the same problem though. I went turmoil here, and you can see on her I don't have nearly as much dominion. So I think I'd go back up to order 2 and maybe go up, I don't know, neutral heat scales, or probably drop the magic and maybe a misfortune, or drop the growth. I don't know. You would need to get rid of this turmoil though. That's for sure. And then finally, we have small tall. This was an eldest dwarf, and what I liked for this guy, he went imprisoned, and I got fire resist, I got shock resist, I went larger, enchanted blood surge. Basically things that are not incarnate, because as imprisoned, that's far too late to be taking any of that. That being said, I mean, this gives us at least some regen. Definitely not as good as before. This is more of a killy bless, just relying on a larger HP pool. It does make our bears size 7 and our normal sacred size 4, so they are 1 per square, which is unfortunate. That is a bit of a holdup. But he also brought more magic diversity, and he is a really good smith. So when he came out, you could do a lot more crafting. We could do staves of elemental power. We can do astral stuff, crystal stuff. Yeah, lot more crafting here than we otherwise could do. That being said, I don't love the rainbow in prisons particularly. I know that some people absolutely love those. I think for me, my favorite of these was definitely Woody. I liked having an awake researcher and sacred expansion, and I felt it was very strong, quite strong. Even in year 1, you might even be able to take out some tier 1 thrones with your sacreds and some bears. You could just roll over those pretty quickly. So depending on what throne it is, that might be a nice little power spike for you. If you got like a special mage, or you lucked into some nature gems or some astral gems or some fire gems, all of those things would be very strong. So I quite like Woody. He is a cool dude. All right, and just to show off a little bit, this was my last test game before recording. We are on turn 27, so we're in early summer of year 2. We have killed TNG. We have killed Mikland. We have taken 1 throne. We definitely can do this throne. I just need the time to do it. We can definitely do this throne. I just need the time to do it. This one, just need the time to do it. So we are in a pretty dang strong position. I am running around. This is my main army. I've got, 68 bears still surviving. I've got 48 sacreds here. And where is my other... Oh, here they are. And I've got this secondary army. They've got 13 bears and 22 sacreds. I just got out my first Holy 3. It's flying over here to do the throne claim / take over all of these guys, having to buff the sacreds in this army. I've probably lost 20 sacreds and maybe 20, 30 bears, perhaps. As you can see, I have a ton of gems. Research-wise, I am heading towards Mother Oak. So I'm going to do bears, and I'm going to maintain about 50 gems so I can Mother Oak right away. I'm starting to infrastructure up different forests so that I can recruit our Thunder Priests. This was a bit of a weird terrain. I had some weird mountains that kind of made me expand awkwardly. Hence, I kind of went up this way and bumped into TNG super duper early. And I saw he was kind of cornered, so I went for it. It was a bit brutal. I had to sit on his capital, and I couldn't break the walls until the bears arrived. So we sat there for a few turns just bottling him up. I summoned up, I think, 4 sets of bears, and when the bears got here, we broke the fort, we were in, we killed them, we're done. And then same with Mikland. I basically came out of this fight, and I just went straight down here into Mikland and took them over. So I feel like I'm in a pretty good place. Now, Baratos is having an amazing game. So they are on my northern and southern border, as it were. So they would probably be a thing I need to fight. And if I beat them, I would win. I've already got enough thrones near me, I think, that I could do it. So pretty strong. Having the snow move here was really key because I could get reinforcements. It would take me 2 turns to get here, rather than for most people, I think you'd go 1, 2, 3, 4 because of the snow penalty to move. That was pretty good. Um, we have troops that have forest and mountain survival, which helps with this area's movement. Otherwise, this would have been quite slow here too. So pretty powerful. Because we have kind of junky forts, the benefit is we have cheap forts. So to build the level 1, it's 800. I believe it's 600 for the second round. So it's only 1400 for that, and you get the temple at 300 gold. So I'm going to at least lab and temple these forests so I can get tons and tons of our Thunder Priests. And then I think for the Baratos War, I'm going to be looking at Storm and Thunder. Although be careful, because if your target also has air magic, they might use your own Storm against you. So there's a tip for you. Okay, so a bit of a longer one here. You can tell how much I was excited for Rus. I think it's a very fun nation. It's good to be back on a nation that has strong sacreds, and I can do like an Awake Sacred expand. It's a fun thing to do. Those are always interesting, and especially low attrition ones, because you can snowball yourself so darn strong. As usual, if you would leave comments, thoughts, your pretenders, your scale preferences down below. I always read those. That's why I make these videos, so I can be enlightened by the knowledge of the crowd. And if you haven't yet, I'd appreciate a like if you enjoyed this video. And if you haven't yet subscribed, maybe I've earned your subscription on this one. That always helps. Number go up, make Babel happy. That is always appreciated from everyone. And that will allow you, hopefully, to get notified by YouTube when more content is on the way. All right, builders, take care, and I will see you in the next one.